From the castle in Owings Mills, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Friday in October. Another beautiful day here at the castle. The Ravens injury report, well, not so beautiful, not so pretty. We are going to break down all of the 15 guys who have been listed on the injury report this week. We'll talk about their statuses heading into a critical Week 5 matchup against the Houston Texans. And we will break down that matchup and talk about how the Ravens could maybe throw some chaotic elements into their game plan in order to pull out an improbable win. All that and much, much more. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Jonas, you seem like you're in an upbeat, positive mood. If you're watching on X, Facebook, or YouTube, by the way, you can see Jonas's smiling face and this beautiful brick background at the castle. If you're listening to us on any of your favorite podcast platforms, give us a thumbs up. Write us a 5-star review, and I'll read it out here on the show. We haven't had one in a while, Jonas, and it's making me sad. Perhaps because Ravens fans in general right now are a bit lugubrious, but right now, we have to sit here and talk about the status of all these Ravens injuries, which we will do. But go back and listen to our episode from 2 days ago, by the way, where we talked about the job security of head coach John Harbaugh. If you want more on the status of the Ravens coaching staff, possibility that he could be fired. And listening back to our conversation, Jonas, I think one thing that we perhaps neglected to put in there was a caveat that if this thing continues to go downhill, if the Ravens season continues to veer off into the abyss, we will be reopening this discussion. We have the right to change our minds, and by gosh, we're going to take that right if we so choose. I feel like we just scratched the surface on that conversation, and we talked about why it's very unlikely that John Harbaugh is fired in the middle of the season, but why it's much more possible that an assistant, i.e. Zach Orr, could be fired at some point. But I think we're going to continue to have this conversation throughout the season so long as the Ravens continue to lose.
This is October. It's a long season.
Yeah.
There's many twists and turns ahead.
We didn't close the book on it.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And the more things happen, the more losses mounts, the more players get asked about this, the more people from outside the organization get asked about this. It's going to take on a life of its own. And as dreary a subject as job security is, someone's got to discuss it. And that responsibility falls to us, Paul.
It certainly does. All right, Jonas, our word of the day today is decimated. The definition drastically reduced, especially in number. You brought to my attention that the original meaning of this word comes from a Roman punishment of executing 1 man in 10 of a mutinous legion.
Wow.
That's where the prefix
Didn't know that.
Dec comes from, 1 in 10. Jonas, if the Ravens injury report looks on Sunday similar to how it looks right now, the Ravens will be more than decimated if you go by the original definition. They'll be losing more than 1 in 10 players. They'll be losing a lot more than one. I mean, 53-man roster, there were 15 guys in the injured list.
To be clear, they're not dying.
I don't think there was
not
any
being put to death.
I don't think there was any concern of that.
Okay.
Do you think there were people that were listening and were unclear about that?
I don't know. You mentioned dying. I just wanted to get out ahead of that.
Yeah, that's fair. The reason that decimated is our word of the day is because this Ravens roster is currently decimated by injuries. After that Chiefs game on Sunday, they looked particularly thin, and we had our concerns entering this week, and then things only got worse this week with more guys being added to that injury report. And as we sit here at 2:37 on Friday, we don't yet have the Friday injury report in which guys will be listed, questionable or out for Sunday's game. But we are going by what we have seen throughout the week. And Jonas, have you ever seen a Ravens injury report this long?
Yes.
You have. 2015?
2011 or 2021
with
COVID,
between
injuries,
COVID and
everything. Yeah, that one was an even longer CVS receipt to borrow your parlance from the socials. Yeah, I mean it has been worse. It can always get worse. It can always get better. But right now it's looking pretty bleak.
It is. Let's start at the top with quarterback Lamar Jackson, who suffered that hamstring strain on Sunday against the Chiefs. It's not looking good. He has been missing from practice all week long. We don't obviously yet have a designation for him, but it's looking more and more like Cooper Rush will be the starter on Sunday. That is obviously the most important injury on this injury report. Roquan Smith suffered a hamstring injury on Sunday as well. John Harbaugh didn't provide any updates on any of these guys, but he did have perhaps a slip up where he said Roquan Smith will not be wearing the green dot as he usually does on Sunday, which indicates that Roquan Smith is not going to play in this game. Marlon Humphrey, calf injury, did not participate at all this week. Chidobe Awuzie, hamstring injury, also did not participate on Thursday. Patrick Ricard, calf, has not participated at all since the start of the season. Kyle Hamilton, who finished out Sunday's game, popped up on the injury report this week with a groin injury, and he's missed each of the past 2 practices. Odafe Owe also joined all these guys on the injury report as well with an eye injury. What do you think happened there, Jonas? Poked in the eye?
They were in shells yesterday, so not the full pads. So maybe
So
just getting poked.
That doesn't include helmets. Do shells include helmets?
Yeah.
So he got poked in the eye somehow?
Maybe.
So you're going to start wearing a visor, I guess, after this?
He could. I mean, I guess it's a good thing that it's not eyes plural.
I guess so. Do you think they would put eyes on there?
Probably not. Probably not. I think you only get weirdly specific when it comes to like the side of the quarterback who's hurt. Like if it's an elbow injury or if it's a shoulder injury or if it's an arm injury, then they have to specify whether that's the throwing shoulder or not, or the throwing arm or not. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible that if it's a 2-eye injury, they would just say eye injury and we wouldn't get specific. But who knows?
Who knows? And then this list of guys were limited on Thursday. And I think we can read into that and say that a lot of these guys are probably playing without 100% certainty. Cornerback Nate Wiggins, defensive tackle Travis Jones, outside linebacker Kyle Van Noy, wide receiver Devontae Walker, defensive end Brent Urban, left tackle Ronnie Stanley, center Tyler Linderbaum. And then, of course, we have third-round rookie Emory Jones, who's still ramping up, and we have Jair Alexander, who has been a healthy scratch since his performance in Week 1 against the Bills. Jonas, this team is going to look radically different on Sunday than it did in Week 1. It's going to look radically different than it did, as you pointed out on Twitter, than against the Texans last year, where they absolutely bulldozed Houston on Christmas. This is going to be a group of backups and practice squad guys. It's going to look like a preseason game in some ways.
Yeah, it's a kitchen sink game. You only have so many guys on this roster. Obviously that there are players who Ravens fans have probably not heard of who will be introduced as starters before the game on Sunday. Get ready to learn about Josh Tupou, perhaps. Get ready to learn about, I think Ravens fans should know who Teddy Buchanan is, but there's a possibility that he is wearing the green dot on Sunday because Roquan Smith can't play. Kyle Hamilton probably won't play. We were kind of racking our brains to think who was the last Ravens rookie who wore the green dot. It might have been Patrick Queen. I'd have to go back and look at the archives, but it's an awful lot to ask of these guys. And John Harbaugh said he would be comfortable with a rookie having that responsibility as the defensive signal caller. Maybe Trenton Simpson has some experience that we're unaware of where he would be slotted into that responsibility. But communication has been a failure in a lot of key spots. For the responsibility of that to be translated from Roquan Smith, who on his best days knows everything, sees everything, to a guy like Teddy Buchanan, who even on his best days can sometimes seem like his head is spinning. Now you're having this huge responsibility of him being asked to relay everything, see everything, know where certain guys are supposed to be aligned, not just in the back end, should be not just in the front end, but in the back end as well. It's a lot. Obviously this Texans team, I think only last week really started to ramp up the pre-snap motion, and you would hope that they would dial it back just for the sake of Teddy Buchanan not having to sort out who's going where before the snap and all that good stuff. So it's a huge ask of a guy who, again, was not even a day 2 pick and is now potentially being the fulcrum of this defense before the snap and after the snap.
Tells you a lot about how far Trenton Simpson has fallen in the estimation of the Ravens coaching staff by the fact that it wouldn't be a guy who's in his 3rd season now in the NFL and was taken drafted a round higher than Teddy Buchanan, that this responsibility could fall to Teddy Buchanan. You could be looking at a secondary, by the way, that has Malachi Starks and Sanusi Kane probably starting at safety. I mean, would they play maybe Reuben Lowry? Could be starting at safety next to Malachi Starks. You could be at cornerback. You got Nate Wiggins, who was, again, still not 100% sure he's going to play. He's limited with an elbow injury that he suffered in the 4th quarter against the Chiefs. It would be Nate Wiggins, TJ Tampa, and then maybe Jair Alexander if he is active and not another healthy scratch for this game.
Keon Martin in the slot. Can't forget about him.
Yeah. I mean, this is a completely decimated defense. And that linebacker, of course, Teddy Buchanan and Trenton Simpson. This is nothing.
And or Jay Kummel.
Yeah. And then a defensive line that doesn't include Nnamdi Madubuike. This looks absolutely nothing like the defense we thought the Ravens would have at this point in the season.
On the plus side, they didn't have Travis Jones on Sunday against Kansas City. They probably should have him back. That's a big deal just because this is a Texans offense, as we're about to get into, does not run the ball especially well. And I know the Ravens haven't defended the run all that great, but it would at least be a good thing for them to have their huge 340, 350 pound nose tackle taking on blocks, making life easier for those off ball backers. You hope that Kyle Van Noy, like we said, is back there. He seemed to be in good spirits this week. They definitely need a guy who can rush the passer, especially if Odafe Oweh is unavailable because of that eye injury. So it's an all hands on deck situation. And this is, as a coach, when you really make your money, can you get these guys who haven't been either put in spots that they may be asked to put in on Sunday, or just straight up haven't played the kind of workload that they're probably going to get on Sunday because they are backups, because they are practice squad guys. You're going to have everyone, ready to play as big a role as possible. And that is, how Mike McDonald distinguished himself in 2022 and 2023 in getting the Ronald Darbys of the world and getting the Arthur Maulettes of the world ready to play big roles, knowing not just their role, but the responsibilities of the guy next to them or in front of them or behind them. Can you get as many guys as possible ready to play a game that could determine how the rest of the season swings?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a critical game, obviously, for the Ravens season in general, because you lose this game, you fall to 1-4. You have the Rams on the schedule next before you go into the bye week.
Looking a little less intimidating after Thursday night's game.
But I mean, after week 1, we were talking about how the Chiefs didn't quite look like themselves. We were talking about how the Texans didn't quite look like themselves. And as spoiler alert, we're both going to be predicting a Ravens loss in this game. There's all the reason to believe that this team, if they lose on Sunday, could go into the bye at 1-5.
It's bleak.
It certainly is. This is such an important game, not just for the team in general, but also for these specific coaches, because of the heat that is on John Harbaugh and especially on defensive coordinator Zach Orr. And to not have all of their horses out there, to not have the bevy of talented players that the front office has assembled, really puts their back against the wall.
It's they are underdogs at home, which is kind of inconceivable. I know you said it's an improbable win, but Vegas would suggest that this is, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could go out and get a win. It's just a 2.5 point spread for the Texans, and they haven't been world beaters themselves. So there's a world in which they take care of business at the end of these games, these hard luck losses, and they come into Baltimore as 3-1 themselves, maybe even undefeated. That there hasn't been a whole lot separating them from having the kind of start that they wanted. You could also say that about the Ravens. Just one game where they were clearly outplayed. Obviously they would have liked to have finished that game better against the Lions. That the scoreline was maybe a little bit flattering than the record would suggest. But they need to. This is not a great Texans team. We don't think it's certainly on offense not really anything I think as threatening as what the Lions presents, the Chiefs present. But this is a hellacious defense. And by the way, the Ravens won't have their starting quarterback available. We think.
Jonas, when we were talking about this game, you suggested the possibility of a chaos menu for the play callers, both on offense and defense. And when I thought about that, I thought of it as if this is an FCS team going up against Alabama. You are in a position where I don't want to say nobody's predicting you to win because, as you said, this line is only 2.5 points, but you are underdogs at home. You're going to be without your superstar quarterback. You're going to be without your superstar safety, most likely.
You need the crowd behind you in the worst way possible.
Yep. Do you just throw everything at the wall? Do you just throw caution to the wind and try to pull out all the trick plays, pull out all the stops in order to get this win? Or do you just say, look, on paper, if everybody was healthy, we would be a better team than the Texans. We feel like we can be in this game up until the end. You make it a close game in the fourth quarter, and you can still pull out the win. We still have Derrick Henry. We still have some superstar players here. Do you just stick with the game plan, or do you go full chaos? What would a full chaos menu include for you, Jonas, both on offense and defense?
I think it's definitely some plays at the back end of that playbook that maybe you were hoping to hold on to for a playoff game. I mean, I think you think back to that loss to the Bills, like there was the play where I think they were trying to throw the pass to Ronnie Stanley. that never came to fruition because of just how busted that play ended up being. I think you have to embrace variance up until a certain point. You don't want to just go balls to the wall every single possession, every single play. You can't have the first Ravens drive end up looking like the first Ravens drive of the preseason did for Cooper Rush, where he drops back. His first drop back is a interception down the right sideline on a back shoulder throw that ends up being a front shoulder throw. You can't have a play end as dramatically as that, but all the same, you can't have it be one conservative play after another that ends up being a third and out, and the Texans take over possession at the 40 because you give a 2-yard run, and then an incomplete pass because you can't protect against Will Anderson Jr. and Daniel Hunter. You have to do things that are creative. You have to do things that are unconventional, unexpected, but you also have to lean into the strengths of this team where you see fit. Just because there's the possibility of a chaos menu doesn't mean that you have to get away from toss plays to Derrick Henry or, up the gut plays to Derrick Henry. I mean, I think it's unrealistic for this rushing offense, which, came into the season as the strength of this team, to be anywhere as near dynamic as it was in that game against Houston on Christmas Day last year, where Derrick Henry rushed for 140, 150 yards. I mean, so many of those plays, I think, were built around the fact that the Texans knew that they had to be aggressive against Lamar and Derrick Henry. You have guys just shooting upfield, and Todd Monken kind of taking advantage of that aggressiveness the way that he tried to against Cleveland in week 2, where you're expecting guys to shoot upfield and you're running trap plays and you're trying to take advantage of their aggressiveness, but it just didn't work. And you have to live with the realistic possibility that this Texans defense, the way that they want to play, you just might not have the personnel or the schemes to take advantage of them the way that you did in week 17 last year. So, I mean, just looking at some of the Derrick Henry highlights from that game last year, it's like poetry in motion. You have 3 offensive linemen pulling to the second level and Derrick Henry not being touched until he's 10 yards downfield because you have the perfect play for whatever is being called. It's probably not going to have that margin of error because you don't have Lamar, because this offensive line is not what it was at the end of last season. So it's going to be, on Todd Monken. I know we've talked a lot about Zach Orr, but Todd Monken has to be in his bag in a way that he hasn't been able to, or hasn't really, I don't want to say hasn't needed to, but so much pressure is going to be on him to have this offense stay on script, stay ahead of the chains, not put Cooper Rush or this passing offense in a situation where you're having to hold up for 3 or 4 seconds, because that's just not Cooper Rush's game.
Yeah, I mean, the running game has to be the focal point, obviously, on offense, because anytime you have Cooper Rush starting a game, you're not going to feel great about your passing offense. The good news is Cooper Rush will have a full complement of weapons. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, all those guys should be, DeAndre Hopkins, all those guys should be healthy and ready to go for this game. So you have kind of the high floor there in terms of the talent level. And if Ronnie Stanley plays, you should have the entire offensive line in front of him. But there's no reason that Derrick Henry should have anything fewer than 18, 20 carries at the very least in this game.
Well, I mean, unless you're getting blown out, in which case it just...
Then you got to take to the air.
Right.
But there's no way that Derrick Henry can be around 10 carries if this is a close game in the fourth quarter, because Derrick Henry's gotten just 31 carries over the last 3 games combined. That is a number that, even with Lamar Jackson in there, is not nearly high enough. And I know the Ravens, obviously, in situations like the Lions game and the Chiefs game, have had to throw their way back into those games. But still, Derrick Henry needs to get the ball often. And the Ravens could be adding Keaton Mitchell to this backfield as well, because just the sheer number of injuries means that Keaton Mitchell, if he's healthy, he may have to be active. The Ravens are going to could have 4 running backs if Rasheen Ali is in there as well. You could get all kinds of funky runs, all kinds of funky screen passes. Whatever needs to be done, you need to put the ball in the hands of your playmakers, the guys that are here. And you don't want to have Cooper Rush back there patting the football with, 4 or 5 guys in his face. You want to try to get the ball in the hands of Derrick Henry, Rasheen Ali, Keaton Mitchell,
right.
Justice Hill, whoever you need to do to get involved. You need to get the ball to them.
Yeah, if it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 in the first quarter, second quarter, you can't afford to be too cute. But to the extent that, why not have Derrick Henry line up as a Wildcat quarterback and, do some of the stuff that we saw last year, in that game, I think against the Steelers late, where you're sending someone in motion, you're stressing the defense. Is he going to hand it off to Zay Flowers on a kind of read option play? Be content with, if it's 3rd and 5, Derrick Henry could get you 3 or 4 yards, so that on 4th and 1, on 4th and 2, maybe you line up with a tush push. Maybe you are just setting yourself up so that you could have these 4-down drives, 4-down offensive sets where you are comfortable leaning into the possibility that it's like we saw with Philly over the past couple of years. That offense was comfortable in 3rd and short because they knew that if they got just enough
right
on 4th down, you could feel good about pushing forward, extending those downs, renewing those downs, whether it's with a run, whether it's with a QB sneak. Obviously, it wouldn't be Lamar in there. It might not even be Cooper Rush in there. We've seen the Ravens lean on Mark Andrews in some of those short yardage scenarios. The Texans don't really have that true, hog molly, zero tech inside that would gum up the works the way some of the best run defenses in the NFL do. So just, do things that are unconventional. Whether if you get into the goal line, maybe it's Daniel Filer, leaking out as that goal line target, because no one would possibly expect the big 6'8", 350-pound guy to run a short route there.
Anybody who watched his college tape would, though.
Yeah,
he did that in college.
He caught a touchdown for Minnesota.
How much will your ears perk up if you hear number 77 is reported as eligible if they get down to the goal line?
Yeah.
I'm going to turn to you in the press box.
Yeah.
And you will be absolutely titillated.
Yeah. That's a good word.
Thanks.
It's Cooper Rush is obviously going to be, assuming Lamar doesn't play, the guy who is entrusted to make a lot of the right decisions. And I think based on what we saw in the preseason, even that game against Dallas, where I think he has 30 attempts, 2 interceptions, only about 200 yards. But he's a guy who, when you look back at what he did for the Cowboys, it is an extremely quick trigger, but that doesn't mean that he is as conservative as Tyler Huntley was during his heyday, or whatever you want to call it, in Baltimore. Like, he is pushing the ball downfield. Last year, it was a useful contrast, I think, or a useful comparison with Dak Prescott, because Dak Prescott, throughout his entire Cowboys career, has been one of the most aggressive quarterbacks in the NFL at pushing the ball downfield. And so I got curious, and I looked last night in terms of like the percentage of plays that are not screens. How often is he pushing the ball 10 plus yards downfield? He wasn't as aggressive as Dak Prescott was, but it was only like 2 percentage points behind. So I think that gives you a sense of this guy is not afraid of putting the ball in harm's way in tight windows, just giving his guys a chance to make plays. Does that mean, are you throwing go balls to DeAndre Hopkins? Are you asking him to win these 50-50 balls at an even higher rate than Lamar has? Are you kind of throwing the ball blindly, expecting Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers to be there when the ball arrives after they clear that linebacker in some of these short to intermediate windows? I think we'll probably see a good share of screen passes for Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, Derrick Henry, just to take advantage, just to stymie some of the natural inclination of this ferocious Texans pass rush to get upfield. You just have to do whatever you can to protect this offensive line in ways that Lamar, by sheer gravitational pull, has done a great job at. But when you're a relatively unathletic quarterback like Cooper Rush, you need as much help as possible.
Yeah. I do want to get into what the chaos menu looks like on defense, but let's really explore the Cooper Rush dynamic here, because the Ravens invested more in the backup quarterback this past offseason than they had done in a long, long time. Giving Cooper Rush, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but a 2-year, $6.2 million deal that has escalators that can get all the way up to $12 million. They were aggressive in attacking that backup quarterback spot. It's not a 39-year-old veteran in Josh Johnson. It's not a 6th-round pick in Devin Leary. It's somebody who has played a lot of games in the NFL before, all of them with Dallas before this season, 38 games, 14 of them starts, a 9-5 record, twice as many touchdowns as interceptions. And Todd Monken said yesterday they wouldn't have signed him if they didn't believe that he could come up in a moment like this and step up. And your question for John Harbaugh today about the kind of quarterback that Cooper Rush is, gets the ball out quickly, but also is aggressive in pushing the ball downfield. Harbaugh agreed with you that is the kind of quarterback that he is.
Didn't really add a whole lot. Just said, yeah, that is
I
true.
agree. Yeah. Hey, but it was a nice moment of agreement for you. I think it's tough for us to bury Cooper Rush based on what we saw of him in training camp and the preseason, because he's in a new offense. We only get a limited view of everything anyway. We don't know all the mechanics in place. And in a lot of these instances, he's playing with the backups. He's not playing with the starting offensive line, starting complement of wide receivers and tight ends. However, he did not look good. Throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, Cooper Rush did not shine. But there is reason to believe that a guy with 38 career appearances under his belt will not be fazed by the moment and will be able to step up and perform when he's called upon.
He was a starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys,
with a winning record.
Yes, this is one of the most scrutinized teams in the NFL, if not the world. He has been through the ringer. I think it's probably a weird experience for anyone to know that what you do on Sunday could be scrutinized by Skip Bayless or by Stephen A. Smith on a Monday. That is just not an experience that a lot of backup quarterbacks in the world are privy to. So, you kind of see him get up there on this presser that just ended about an hour or two ago. He seems, kind of unfazed, unbothered by the scrutiny of it all. I mean, obviously it's a very, very different situation to get up there before just about a dozen media members compared to what he was normally used to in Dallas, where it's a much, much deeper gaggle on a Wednesday or a Monday or whatever. But he's gonna be a chill guy. I think that was the word that stuck out to me from Justice Hill talking to reporters on Thursday. Like, he is a very relaxed guy in the work week. He's probably going to be a little bit flustered on Sunday, a little bit bothered just by this Texans pass rush. They have a way of making good quarterbacks look very, very bad. I think probably the most ominous stat, I guess if you want to call it, looking at some of the pressure production. Every quarterback is worse when they're bothered by pressure, but it was under 40% completion rate for these quarterbacks this year that have played the Texans when they've been pressured. Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, guys like that. Obviously, Cam Ward, you don't really expect a whole lot, but because of just how coherent and how fast and how well coached this Texans defense is, when they've gotten to the quarterback, when they've gotten to the backfield, they've made decent quarterbacks look absolutely terrible. And I think that's probably the biggest reason to not embrace chaos if you're the Ravens. Why you would say, all right, if it's 3rd and 8, we are not going to get all 5 eligible receivers downfield. We want at least 6, maybe 7 guys staying in protection, perhaps living to fight another down, but you just can't have your quarterback be vulnerable to the kinds of game-changing plays that would be decisive in a situation like this. So have guys that you trust out there. Hopefully Ronnie Stanley's healthy. Hopefully Tyler Linderbaum, who's been dealing with, I think, a calf injury this week, is also healthy. But you just want Cooper Rush to feel good about where he's going downfield, because you just can't have it be a situation where you look up and it's the 3rd quarter and he's thrown 2 picks and you're down 17 points.
Yeah. Our Who's Got It Better Than award does go to Cooper Rush on today's podcast. Jonas, I just am worried about you. If you're walking into the stadium with your bag, if you're walking out of the stadium after the game, if fans are coming up to you and asking for selfies or autographs after a crucial Ravens win over the Texans, thinking that you are Cooper Rush.
It's a waking nightmare.
It's not only a possibility, it is a likelihood.
Yes.
Would you correct them, or would you just stop and take the selfie?
I would stop and take the selfie.
Of course you would. You would bask in the glory there. Or unless if Cooper Rush plays terribly and they lose the game.
There's a possibility that people are pouring their drinks on me.
It's also possible. All right, let's talk about the chaos menu, what it could look like on the defensive side of the football. Texans defense is number 1 in the NFL in points per game. Ravens defense is dead last in the NFL in points per game, giving up 33.3 points per game. Talking about an absolutely decimated secondary, linebacking crew, defensive line. What could Zach Orr do on Sunday to throw a wrench in the Texans' offensive game plan?
I think this is probably a situation where if I'm Zach Orr, you really can't be that crazy. You can't do that much stuff that introduces that much variance, because just look at the personnel.
Right.
I mean, are you going to ask these guys to play defenses that they have played, that they've repped out maybe only once or twice in their entire career here, from stretching as far back as the summer? Like, can't.
They need to get the basics down before they can do that.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we all know about just how bad the defense has been when Kyle Hamilton hasn't been on the field. It's not a pretty thing. You hope that if you're the Ravens, Odafe Oweh is healthy, Kyle Van Noy is healthy, Travis Jones is healthy, and between those 3 guys, and I guess throw in Mike Green, Tavius Robinson, you get enough push from this pass rush group. You get enough production from this run defense, which is much maligned. It's not a Texans rush. This game last in the NFL in rush success rate. So hopefully, if you are Zach Orr, that means that you are getting more 3rd and longs in this game than you ever have all season, aside from obviously that week 2 game against the Browns. That Browns offense probably worse than this Texans offense on balance, maybe worse than any offense the Ravens will see all year. But still, that there's enough there. I think that if you're the Ravens, you're hoping for the possibility where you get into 3rd and 5, like I said, 3rd and 8, and you can finally trot out some of these bespoke blitzes, some of these stunts, creepers, sim pressures, stuff that you just have not been able to get to because of how rarely you've been in some of these obvious passing situations. I asked Zach Orr yesterday, why the Ravens, despite having this defense that is generally considered to be creative and progressive, has not been all that aggressive with the number of stunts that they've run. I think, FTN has the data being like they are 30th or thereabouts in the NFL in their stunt 6% of all passing plays. And he said, I think correctly, we just haven't had the schemes, the personnels, or the situations where it's made a whole lot of sense. So perhaps, even though you don't have a game wrecker like Nnamdi Madubuike out there to make sense, for these stunts, maybe Fub makes sense in a way that the Ravens just haven't had the opportunity to. So I think the Ravens need to lean into that. I think they need to lean into blitzes, even though it just has not worked for them at all. They do not have a single sack on the 40 or 55+ pass rush plays.
That's crazy.
This year, it has not worked for them in any kind of ways. Cover 0 hasn't worked for them. Cover 1 hasn't worked for them. Maybe it will work for the Ravens because this Texans offense line, while improved, still is not among the upper half, the upper 60% in the NFL. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Texans offensive line that we knew was going to be a problem coming into the season, and it has proven to be a problem. And as such, the running game has suffered, and CJ Stroud has regressed in a lot of statistical categories. He is pretty mobile, so CJ Stroud is going to be able to extend plays, but you have to take advantage of this Texans offensive line. But we said the same thing about the Chiefs running game. We said this Ravens defense has to be able to stop the run against the Chiefs because Chiefs haven't run the ball well all season. Well, the Texans haven't been able to do really anything well all season. I know they just got their shutout win over the Titans, but they have not put together a solid game on offense in any of their first 4 games so far. So you have to be able to get to the quarterback. You have to be able to stop the run. These are basic things that they have to do well before they can even think about blitzing. Because Zach Orr also said part of the reason that they don't blitz as much on third down is because a lot of these are third and short, third and medium, 3rd and 3, 4 or 5. Once you get to 3rd and 8 and 9, that's when you can really pin your ears back and send the dogs. But they have to be able to set the tone on first down and second down before they can, as has become a popular phrase in the NFL, earn the right to rush the passer.
Right. And I think if you're the caution that I would offer here is that it has not been a great Texans offense so far, but there's a possibility that this Texans schedule hasn't really done them a whole lot of favors. Like obviously 26-0 against the Titans last week kind of speaks for itself, but the Rams in week 1, Bucks in week 2, Jags in week 3. I don't think anyone really expected going into the season that those 3 teams would be giant slayers defensively. But you look at the stats.
They're not pushovers.
No. And in fact, like looking at just over the first 4 weeks by EPA, I think all 3 of those teams defensively have been among the top 10 most efficient defenses in the NFL. And the Ravens definitely have not been that. So perhaps this Texans offense is in fact way better than we are giving it credit for, which is not what you want to hear if you are a Ravens fan. So will kind of water find its level in a way that is very, very unappetizing to Ravens fans, perhaps. But on the whole, I think the Ravens have, with Nate Wiggins, if he's healthy, the kind of guy who could perhaps blot out Nico Collins, who's a really good guy. There's some inconsistency there with the other, targets on this Texans offense. It's a lot of rookies. Christian Kirk just has not really been the kind of slot receiver in terms of production that they were hoping for.
No Tank Dell, obviously.
No Tank Dell. Woody Marks looks like a potential game changer at running back, but again, still not a whole lot of consistency there. Nick Chubb is not the guy that Ravens fans will remember from those early days on those Browns offenses.
No Joe Mixon, right?
No Joe Mixon. No Joe Mix, perhaps at any point
this
year.
Season.
So it really just comes down to, can the Ravens fluster CJ Stroud in a way that they were absolutely able to last year? I think they got 5 or 6 sacks total in that Week 17 blowout. I think we have forgotten to mention the most salient, the most hilarious fact, which is in 3 Texans starts by CJ Stroud, the Texans have scored a grand total of 0 touchdowns against this Ravens defense. The one touchdown that the Texans have scored against the Ravens in those 3 games was the punt return touchdown against the Ravens in that divisional round playoff game. Other than that, They have not scored a touchdown. They've come close. I think the closest that they came was the red zone against the Ravens last year, but Darius Washington was the finisher, had a great fourth down stop. Other than that, it really hasn't been anything to write home about.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens dominated them. It was week 1, right, of 2023?
His CJ Stroud's NFL debut.
Yeah, dominated them then, dominated them again in the playoffs that year, and then dominated them on Christmas last year.
Yep.
So it is the opposite conversation that we were having about the Chiefs or even the Bills, that these teams that have had the Ravens number, well, the Ravens have had the Texans numbers. All right, we are going to give our score predictions on the other side of another quick break.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time.
All right, Jonas, let's get to our score predictions for this one. We both, as previously mentioned, have the Texans winning this game. What's your final score?
I'm picking the Texans to win 21-16, which honestly should be music to Ravens fans' ears because I have gotten only one of these games right, correct? And it was the week 2 win over the Browns. Other than that, just completely falling on my face with every single prediction. But I just don't feel all that great about. Strangely, I almost feel better about this Ravens offense, even with Lamar out, just because
everybody else is there.
Yeah, basically. Even though this Ravens offensive line has not covered itself in glory over these first 4 weeks, I think there is enough there. There's enough consistency there that perhaps this team can be in situations where you just feel good about what they can do. Whereas with this defense being what it is, with Zach Orr not really having put this team in situations, hasn't put this defense in situations to put its best foot forward. Maybe that changes this week against this not great Texans offense. But on the whole, considering the scale and the scope of these injuries that the Ravens will probably have to deal with on Sunday, I just don't feel good.
No, I don't know how I could possibly pick the Ravens to win this game considering the number of injuries. If you are without Roquan Smith, Lamar Jackson, Kyle Hamilton, any one of those injuries by itself could be enough to doom the Ravens for a game. And to lose all 3 of those guys with more as well, potentially being out, with potentially no Marlon Humphrey and Chidobe Awuzie, and obviously no Pat Ricard. There's just too much for them to overcome in this game. I have the Ravens losing this one by a larger margin, 27-17. But I was thinking more about this game, Jonas, and I was thinking this would be such a satisfying win, the likes of which I don't know Ravens fans have felt in a while. The only win that they have so far this season against the Browns was hardly satisfying because they played like crap for first 3 quarters of that game before they finally put their foot down. And in so many of these wins for the last 3 years, the Ravens have been favorites or they have been only slight underdogs. And everybody knows how talented this roster is when all of the pieces are in place. For them to be able to overcome an injury report, an injury list this long, you have practice squad guys out there, guys that you've never heard of out there playing significant snaps, and somehow you're able to sneak out a win in a critical game. That would be so satisfying. It would be, I think in sports in general, the wins that you don't expect are much more enjoyable, obviously, than the wins that you do. Even though the wins that you do, even if they come against better teams, like, I think of like the Lions blowout a few years ago or the Dolphins blowout that season.
Right.
The Texans aren't a great team, but if the Ravens can, in front of a home crowd, with guys that are being called up from the practice squad, have been signed within the last 2 weeks, are playing significant snaps, and are just playing better football, are playing together, I think that would be such a satisfying win. But I'm still not predicting them to win this game.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough to wrap your head around because everything that we've seen from this Ravens defense over the past 4 weeks, it's almost rendered everything that we saw from this Ravens defense in the preseason kind of moot, kind of obsolete. But if you want to be optimistic, you can, and you want to blank your mind for the past 4 weeks and just focus on what the Ravens did in that preseason. What we saw from guys who, like you said, have not played a whole lot of snaps or have not really started in key spots. What we saw from that Ravens defense in the preseason matches a lot with what we would have to see from this Ravens defense on Sunday for this team to succeed. It's Trent Simpson and Teddy Buchanan and Jake Hummel and
Mike Green.
Yeah, Mike Green.
Malachi Starks.
Just guys who
Keon Martin.
Again, the list is long, and I think the Ravens over the preseason, if you look at PFF grade, had by far the highest PFF grades on defense as a unit of anyone in the NFL.
Yeah.
So does it really matter? Not really. But there is at least some hope there that Zach Orr and this coaching staff have put guys in positions to succeed in the preseason. And will the guys that we saw do cool stuff in the preseason be capable of repeating that, replicating it in week 5? It's possible.
Yeah, I think Ravens fans are just searching for something to feel good about, obviously, and they won't feel good if they don't get the win on Sunday because they fall to 1-4, and then they have the Rams coming up. But I think Ravens fans are also desperate to feel good about this Ravens rookie class too. This is a group that we saw at times ball out during the preseason training camp. Malachi Starks had a really good camp. Hasn't translated to the regular season. He's going to be playing a big role. Mike Green, for all he was touted to be, doesn't look like he's capable right now of being an NFL regular.
Right.
He's going to be playing a lot of snaps, even if Kyle Van Noy is back. Can he perform? Can Teddy Buchanan take the ball and run with it as if he is wearing the green dot? There are a lot of ways in which the rookie class can step up just because they haven't shown it yet in the first 4 games. A lot of rookies struggle right out of the gate. There's a chance that they turn it on here.
Yeah, and Ravens PR sent out a kind of quick hits stat last night that I thought was really interesting. The Ravens rookie class has played the second most snaps of anyone in the NFL. The only rookie class that has played more than this Ravens rookie class is the Browns rookie class. And I think if you are Cleveland and that fan base, you are feeling a lot better about Carson Schlesinger, about Quinshon Judkins, about kind of
who's there? Mason Graham is their first round pick.
Absolutely. Then if you are the Ravens and if you are a Ravens fan, about Malachi Starks, about Teddy Buchanan, about Mike Green. So could that possibly change? Absolutely. But I think for the most part, this Ravens rookie class will need to absolutely step up in a way that we just haven't really seen them deliver this season.
Yeah. And the Browns total, I'm sure there is going to continue to go up as they start Dylan Gabriel, I believe, on Sunday. All right. That just about does it for the Banner Ravens podcast. Of course, we have so much more coverage for you on thebanner.com where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months.
Shout out to the Banner.
At least John Harbaugh is giving us shout outs. At Jonas _Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Game is Sunday at 1 o'clock. Gianna Hahn has plenty more for you as well. And looking forward to it. Looking forward to being in the press box next to you when number 77 reports is eligible down by the goal line. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Jonas Shaffer, I'm